It took all day to get to the point of shit.
Like, you mean a bowel movement?
No, it didn't take me all day to shit. It took me all day just to get into a low-level shitty mood.
Oh. That's you all the time. You don't get better than low-level shitty. It's either low-level shitty or worse from there.
Probably.
I've never seen you cheerful. I mean, this...
When we do filmmaking shit...
No, you're fucking miserable. You complain the whole time. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to just... Yeah.
You see me celebrate when we have small victories. It lasts for like 3 seconds.
Hold on.
And then it's over.
Hold on. It's like premature celebration.
I'm trying to ruin it.
You don't have to try to ruin things. You naturally ruin things. Look at you. I'm looking at you right now, and I want to go...
Yes. I'm glad I can spread anti-joy. It's like antimatter, but I exude anti...
I'm going to give you some advice that men have been giving women.
Shut the fuck up?
No, I'm... No, that men have been giving women for generations.
Is that going to be offensive? Do you have to cut that out?
The advice that men have been giving to women for generations now.
Yeah.
Just smile.
What?
Smile.
Men don't... That's some bullshit.
You're so pretty when you smile. You've never heard that?
Anyone that you're attracted to is pretty when they're smiling.
It's a way of condescending women. You I can't believe you've never heard this.
You're pretty when you smile.
Or just smile. You should smile.
That sounds like you're saying stop being a bitch in a nice way.
Yeah. That's what it is, and that's why women are pissed off about it all the time.
Yeah.
You just confuse it for...
What am I confusing? And why am I vibrating? Stop it! I got to turn it off? Fine. Fine, you piece of shit bone. That's what I do all day, is I yell at inanimate objects.
That are supposed to enrich your life, but you just... Just, if the phone's doing something you don't like to do it, you got to be smarter than the phone.
Huh? It's called a smartphone.
Yeah, but it's not called a smarter than you phone. Miserable idiot.
I am not an idiot.
Is it idiot?
I'm everything but an idiot.
You claim to be dumber than the phone.
Because I have a low self-esteem, and I'm self-defecating.
You self-shitting?
Yes. I shit on myself.
Everyone self-shits. Everyone self-shits.
Not everyone. Some people gotta have it pulled out.
Only on very special days.
That's what colonics are, right? They just shove a hose up there and...
That's not for shitting, though. That's for, like, a cleanse. That's a cleanse.
Yeah. I also think that's not good for you. Because you destroy all the good bacteria, that you got built up. And then it's like... It doesn't matter, because we're all sick anyway. Doesn't matter what you eat or what you do. You're gonna die in the end. So just... And here I am saying... Just enjoy yourself, enjoy life. But I'm the most miserable fuck in the universe.
Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie podcast episode. No, it's take, right?
Yeah.
Film Reverie podcast take 81. I'm pretty sure.
And action. Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckmeyer, and as always,
the balding Ewok.
The balding Ewok, Bragley Kingston himself.
Still balding.
Yeah, that's that's for another episode.
It's the never-ending journey.
Yeah. We'll have a balding update episode at a later date. Today we're happy to get to talk to the indie film hustle
the guy
King
with the
himself.
car, the name of a car.
Yeah.
I mean,
He says it's Alex Ferrari. Let's go ahead and say the name so we can start the conversation.
Yeah.
Alex Ferrari from Indie Film Hustle TV, podcast, Bulletproof, all the stuff. I'm going to let you give your resume because I don't want to leave anything out.
I appreciate it.
You have a way longer resume than I do. So it's Alex Ferrari. How's it going?
I'm good, guys. Thank you so much for having me back on the show, man. I appreciate it.
In case there's any, you're welcome, totally. In case there's anyone out there that has not heard of you, that might be listening to our show, that does not know who you are, which seems like a strange, universe we'd be living in. Tell them about yourself. Just go ahead and give a rundown.
My name is Alex Ferrari. I am a filmmaker with about 25 years in the business. I run a company called IFH Industries, which runs IndieFilmHustle.com, Bulletproof Screenwriting.tv, and the new website FilmTrepreneur.com, and podcasts associated with all of those websites as well. And I also have IFH TV, which is IndieFilmHustle.tv, which is this streaming film education. So it's basically kind of like Netflix, but thousands of hours of courses and documentaries about filmmaking and screenwriting and things like that. So those are the few things. And I'm an author, and I have 2 books. My latest book is called Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, because everybody in this room over here wants to figure out how the fuck to do that.
Yeah, because we were just talking. Look, to be honest, I was listening to their audiobook on Audible.
Yeah.
And I texted Mike and I said, "This is making me depressed." Because we are terrible.
That's a terrible blurb. That's an awful publicity blurb for book.
Listen to the end. I said it's making me depressed because half the things he's saying you need to be a profitable thing, and we're terrible at it. So I'm trying to figure out how do
I want to put that on the front cover. I read your book and it made me depressed. I want that.
Yeah,
Right
we're terrible at all these things, and we actually.
I'm exaggerating and joking, but
to be honest with you,
how do I make my how do I become you? Because I don't know how to do that.
So, really, the only thing that we are naturally good at, and that's still arguable, is making the thing. It's like we're writing, coming up with ideas, wanting to make stuff, making things, and getting them done. We're getting much more polished, well-oiled machine going with that, especially on our little, make it happen indie filmmaker budget. But we naturally, and I told you this when we spoke earlier, are not as naturally talented.
Yeah.
We don't see it that way. We're the person you wrote your book for. We really are.
We have the ideas.
Yeah.
But then, I'm not going to sit there and make the phone calls to people.
Well,
I'm not going to.
Well, don't tell him that because he's the hustle guy. He's going to give you shit for that.
I can't write. Oh, you want our movie. We made this for you. We made this because we needed to make it. So how do we make it? Yeah. I don't know.
So
we're like worst case scenario. Maybe he can't help us.
We made a film, an indie, like a zero budget. We've talked about it a lot on our show. We're trying to figure out how best to put it out in 2020, and it's a zero budget film that we and you know the feeling. We know all its flaws. We're 1,000% aware of everything that's not quite right about it. But we are also appropriately proud of it because we fought tooth and nail to get the fucking thing done. You know what I mean? And there are things in there that we're really proud of, like that came out exactly how we wanted them to and how we dreamed they might be.
Okay.
But
That's
because
great.
Right. Like we feel like if there's even a scene somewhere in your movie that's just what you wanted, you did good. Try to get 2 scenes right next time, But we've struggled with what to do about it, about how to release it and put it out. It's not really.
Is it marketable? How is it marketable?
And how to market it. It's an indie drama comedy thing, and it's a lot of talking. It's talking. There's like 4 main characters, blah blah blah, and we in our like insecure, what's the word, imposter syndrome selves, we look at it and go, nobody wants to buy a fucking T-shirt about this movie.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We feel like it's hard enough to trick people into wanting to watch it. How are we going to get them to also want to buy the thing?
All right. So the self-deprecation is at a full maximum here. I mean, you make Kevin Smith look like he's really, very confident.
Again, my fault.
So first I'll ask you a few questions about your movie. First of all, what is the genre of the movie?
We would say it's a drama, comedy drama.
Okay. Is there anything in the story that is associated with a niche audience, a targeted group of people, anything like that?
This is our problem. It's weird how we're going to do a podcast about how nobody...
But it's a problem with most filmmakers. They don't think about the market first.
When we sat down, exactly right. You were talking to me when I read your book this week. It's not that it doesn't have a group of people that might find it worthy of watching, because we really do think there's stuff in there. It's like human existing stuff, but doesn't have like you were talking about the vegan thing. It doesn't have a crazy sexy vegan vibe or a horror or a genre that you could like easily tap into with like VHS and it really is just people who might like watching artfully done movies. You know what I mean?
So you're basically creating an art house romantic or a drama.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you made it for how much? Zero? But like how much?
Well,
when you say zero, what is it?
We've spent money on getting it made, but we actually produced the film for like whatever it cost me to buy food for the actors and crew that 12 days,
Okay.
Or 9 days. Sorry, we shot it in 9 days.
So under a grand? Under a grand?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one thing that you have going for you is that you did it on a very smart budget. A movie like this can't be done for much more than what you did it for.
Yeah.
So that's positive number one. Positive number two is that you have an audience. You have a podcast. You have a platform that you can sell this movie through. Is that platform or is that audience going to support the budget that you spent on this? I don't know.
Yeah.
If your audience is filmmakers, then you should have probably be creating some sort of product, meaning special editions, behind the scenes, educational products that are aimed specifically at your audience.
Yes.
You're not going to try to compete with, Udemy or Skillshare or, Sundance for film education or masterclass. That's not who you're going after. You're trying to create a product for your audience that is a good value proposition. And that is your best bet to generate any revenue with this, because if you put it out there in general, I haven't seen a frame of it. I don't even know what the story is, which is, in all honesty, irrelevant. You know me to be pretty brutally honest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be pretty brutally honest. The story in general and the acting, and if it's wonderful, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Wonderful. Maybe it'll grab some lightning and go. But that's a lottery ticket that happens once a decade.
Right.
It's not something you should hang your hat on. So in the world that we live in today, the marketplace is so cluttered and so oversaturated that even good movies, even good shows aren't getting seen.
Right.
I just caught up to Ray Donovan. I literally just caught up. My wife and I binged it for the last 3 weeks. We binged the entire series.
Nice.
And it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
And I had never seen it. I'd heard of it. I'm like, I hear it's good. Maybe I'll get up to it one day. I've never seen Shameless. There's 10 seasons of that. And I hear it's a really good show. I haven't seen it. There's movies out there that I that are amazing that I have not seen, nor will I probably get a chance to see it, because there's only so many hours in a day that I personally can watch entertainment, and I'm in the business.
Yeah.
And so there's only so many hours. So for you to cut through that clutter at the kind of movie you have, which is a broad spectrum dramedy that's arguably an art house film, which didn't get into Sundance, which didn't get into South by, or doesn't have any sort of street credibility in the film festival circuit, which,
right.
by the way, doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
Right.
But it would probably mean something for your film because your budget is so low.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult for you to penetrate the market space. And that's the reality of it.
Well, that's kind of how we felt about it. So that's where our indecisiveness, or our, I'm a very decisive person, but I've been unsure about it because you only have one chance to put something out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. After that, it's like you're re-releasing, and then you already lost your whatever amount of people were going to rush to it have already rushed to it. And then it just feels like it could be a diminishing return at that point.
It can and it can't, because look, I mean, I made a movie in 2005 and I still make money with it every day.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a great story, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, I literally just checked the numbers this morning. I'm like, oh, great, I made a couple bucks. It's great, fantastic. Like, it still makes money every month. I still make, and when I say money, I say, it's $20 here, $50 there, $100 there. Yeah. It's not, but I've generated. That one little short film has generated arguably hundreds of thousands of dollars for me, because I launched my post-production company off of that, off the back of that short film. Yeah. And then I was able to sell my service and myself, and because of that film, launched my post-production, my post-production business. Yeah. So, it all depends on how you look at it. So with your film, if this is a film that you can market to your audience, the people who listen to you, even if there's 400, 500, 600,000 people who listen to you, and you can get a handful of them to pay you $5 or $10, well, you've paid your budget back. Yeah. You've been smart enough that you did this for a very smart budget. Yeah. So my new film, On the Corner of Ego and Desire, which comes out next year, I've been sitting on that film for 2 years.
Yeah, I remember you've been talking about it for a while. Yeah.
Right, and there's no the first year I waited for Sundance because I was an idiot like everybody else. But I said, look, if there's a movie that I'll ever make that has a chance of getting into Sundance, it's the movie about Sundance. Yeah. So I waited, and that did not pay off. And then I got busy. Doing other stuff, and then I signed a distribution deal with a distributor, a friend of mine. And then we were waiting for deliverables, and then we need a trailer. I'm like, oh God, I don't have 2 days somewhere to sit down and edit a trailer. Mm-hmm. So then that pushed back till I finally delivered everything a few months ago, and we're releasing it 3 days before Sundance. We're like, well, let's just wait till Sundance at this point and piggyback off that press. Yes. But that movie was made for about $3,000. If you read my book, the movie I'm talking about. I made it for $3,000. That's a smart budget for that movie. Yeah. It's, if I made that movie for $50,000. Could I make that money back through my audience and through filmmakers? Maybe. But at $3,000, I've already made my money back. I've never even released the movie. Yeah. Well, it's insane.
I've got dozens of questions for you, but we jumped right in without even having you explain what your book was about. So let's start kind of our style.
I did mention the audiobook in the beginning.
Go back and explain why you want to make why you wanted to write the book and exactly what it's about, and then we'll get back into the nuts and bolts stuff, because it's really fascinating. I devoured your book within I think it was. I know it's only I think it's like a 5 or 6 hour audiobook, but I don't always, I have a kid, work, all that shit. I listened to it while I was running. I listened to it while I was doing dishes in the kitchen just to get it listened to. And it's an easy read, and it's a highly informative read. There's so much stuff in there that, we're filmmakers. We know a ton of stuff about this stuff. But you go into some really thoughtful detail, and you make it. You do it without talking down to the people, to me. Without talking down to.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really well written, and it's a no nonsense, like nuts and bolts. Here's this, here's this, is this. You don't get flowery or anything like that. It just cuts straight to the chase, which is very helpful. In fact, I need to get it in hard copy so that, because it's hard to go back and make notes in an audio book.
Right. I've actually heard that even the book's only been out as of this recording. It hasn't even been out for a week yet.
Yeah.
And I've already heard people that are who bought the audiobook and the ebook that are buying the hardcover or the paperback because they want to go back and
redline it, man.
And redline it. And that means a lot to me. Look, I wrote the book originally. I came up with this concept of the entrepreneurial filmmaker, which, again, I'm not breaking new ground here. But no one had really put everything together before. You know, the model that I talk about is the model that Disney worked with. Mm-hmm. I mean, going all the way back to Walt Disney. You know, right now, somewhere in the world, Disney just made another $10 off of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Made another $20 off of Mickey Mouse. Somewhere in the world, they have still exploited out that original Steamboat Willie cartoon.
Yeah.
So, George Lucas did it. Hasbro did it with Transformers and He-Man. Like, this is not a new concept, but no one has really ever approached it the way I have, and especially in the independent film space. Mm. It's one thing to go, well, you got to do what Disney does. I'm like, well, Disney's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that has insane amount of infrastructure and resources that the normal independent filmmaker does not have. But then as I started to do my own filmtrepreneurial journey, which started back in 2004, 2005, when I made my first short film and sold it, I kind of started seeing what was happening. And over the course of the next, 15 years almost, I was able to study. I always was studying other people's successes. I'm a big student of the industry. Mm-hmm. I read a lot. I read a lot of books. And I am always looking, and anytime I see a movie, I'm always analyzing how they did it, what they're doing, what's the back end, what's their business model. And like we were talking about Fork Over Knives and Food Matters, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Kung Fury, another one. These companies, these independents that have built businesses around their films. And many of them have built empires around their films. Yeah. And they were just independent filmmakers. They were not big companies. They were just regular schmoes like you and me. And I started analyzing how they did everything. And then with the experience of running my own business with Indie Film Hustle, I started seeing how I can incorporate a lot of the techniques I use within my own business, and then incorporate those with making money with movies. And also because I've interviewed so many filmmakers over the years, I just started getting this wealth of information, and I just decided to put it all together. I'm like, there's nothing like this book out there. Nothing. There's not even, nothing has ever been written like this. I'm not trying to boast about it, but like I talk about in the book, there was a hole in the marketplace.
Yeah. There was a niche. There's an untapped niche. Yeah.
This is an untapped niche within the film industry, which is how to actually make money. Not pie in the sky, not how to pitch your movie to a studio, not how to sell your movie to a distributor. No. How to actually do it yourself. And
No, it's interesting because it is hard to figure, because you're right. Back in the 90s when I started trying to make movies, and the thing was get into a film festival, New Line might show up at your thing and see your movie and love it. In fact, I went to the Orlando Film Festival. In fact, you probably lived here then, weren't you? When were you in Full Sail?
I was in Full Sail 94, 95, 96, around there.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the the Florida Film Festival the year that New Line announced that Peter Jackson was directing Lord of the Rings trilogy. And they were there acquiring films at the Florida Film Festival, and they had acquisitions people at the festivals, which I'm sure still happens at bigger ones. But it isn't like that anymore. But that was the thing. Get into a film festival, you got it set. Go make your Robert Rodriguez got a $5 or $7 million deal when he made El Mariachi for like his blood and guts, and then he was set. So, but it's not like that anymore. In fact, no one gives a shit anymore. There's so many festivals. There's no way for anybody to be able to make it around to all those things. And getting to a film festival really has turned into a thing where I feel like the times I got into a film festival were more about making the filmmaker feel like they had a premiere and they got it in front of an audience, because it's so hard to get in front of people and sit in the room with them and watch them watch your movie. That was just about all I ever got out of, and which is a great feeling, by the way. It's amazing.
Oh, wonderful feeling.
Stand in front of a group of people and do the Q&A. And, well, we did this, and I thought it was fun.
Oh, it's a wonderful ego stroke. It's a beautiful ego stroke. And God knows there's not enough egos in our industry.
No, man. I'm the most humble guy. Which is a weird thing. Which is a weird thing to brag about, but
it's called a humble brag.
But
when you brag about being the humblest.
I was thinking about like real estate when you were talking, because that's how real estate people make money. Is they buy a rental property, rent it out. It's not that one rental property isn't going to make them rich, but over 20 years they make tons of money. But you have a bunch of those. And you have the passive income coming in.
It's just revenue streams. It's just business 101. It's creating multiple revenue streams, diversifying your revenue streams as much as you can. So if one goes down, the other one picks up. Yeah. And you're always diversified. And if you do it once, then you repeat that process again and again.
Do you mind? Do you mind telling the story about your short film? Was it Broken? Is the name of it?
Yeah. The film. My film was called Broken, which is arguably one of the most talked about short films of all time. Because I never stopped talking about it.
Because you never stopped talking about it. Yeah.
Because I never stopped talking about it.
Well, nobody else is going to do it, so you.
Nobody else is going to do it. The people like some of my best friends who worked on that film, I still talk to them, and they're just like, "Dude, that horse is dead." I'm like, "Nope, I'm gonna dust it off and keep on riding."
Well, I mean, it's done well. I mean, you've done well for yourself with it. I want the like.
So the concept was I made a movie which the same mentality as any other filmmaker. I just wanted to make a cool movie. There was no niche audience. There was no thought of marketplace. There was no thought of anything. I was just like, I'm gonna go make this movie. I made it for about $8,000, and it was shot on a DVX 100A. Edited on mini. It was shot on mini DV. Edited on a Final Cut Pro like 3 or 4.
Yeah, nice.
And
old school.
And old school. And I put this whole thing together, and I went out to festivals, and I did very well in festivals. We got into probably close to 200 festivals around the world. Won a lot of awards. Did a lot of touring. Did a lot of Q&As. And the movie took me on journeys. I've got flown out to LA, flown up to the Toronto Film Festival, met Roger Ebert, working with some big producers who wanted to make the feature film. I got called by like Oscar-winning producers. I was in Florida, for God's sakes, and I get a call from like this Oscar-winning producer. It's like, "Yeah, I heard about your short. Can I see it?" I'm like, "Oh, sure, sir." And so it took me on a one.
Probably back then you had to mail him a DVD, didn't you?
Well, it's exactly what I did. I mailed him a DVD.
God, that was a long time ago. We're getting old.
Yeah, exactly. But when that movie was done, I realized I was like, well, who's going to see this? How am I going to make money with this? And that's when I first started thinking about the money aspect of things. And I said to myself, well, no one's going to pay to watch a 20-minute action, kind of like a sci-fi action thriller with no stars in it, and from a first-time director that nobody knows about. And this is also again 2004. So we shot in 2004, released in 2005. So what I decided to do is like, I think there might be an audience for this film, and I think the audience is filmmakers, because filmmakers are going to want to know how I made this, because I did some very cool stuff with it. I did over 100 visual effect shots in it. I color graded it to a place where it looked very cinematic. Mm-hmm. And there was just, again, nothing in the marketplace at that time. I mean, YouTube had just launched. Mm-hmm. And they were this is way before Google bought them. There was no education on how to make an independent film. And I'm not talking about Robert Rodriguez's 10-minute film schools. Those are
Yeah.
great. But Robert, you were
Those are
running with
great.
$7 to $10 million. That's not where I'm rolling. So there was nothing out there with everyday tools to make an independent film. So I saw a hole in the market. This is all instinctual, by the way. This was all instinctual. This was not like I sat down on a whiteboard somewhere and drew all this out. This was instinctual.
Yeah.
So I decided to put together a film school. And that film school was about 3.5 hours of how we did everything from conception all the way to the marketing of the film. And I put it together on a DVD, and I did the DVD right. We did replication with it. I literally packed the DVD as much as I possibly could before it ran out of space. I had more content, which I released digitally later, that I could fit on the DVD. And we did a first run of about 1,000 DVDs. We bought 1,000 of them.
Jeez.
And, we invested that money. We're like, let's go. If we're going to go, let's go. And we did. And during that time, for the next 3 to 6 months, I started going after my audience. I started engaging with my audience. I started cultivating that audience. And where I cultivated was mostly message boards in MySpace, because that was what was available at the time. And I released the trailer, and then all of a sudden the trailer goes viral. And people, every filmmaker, you could not go to a message board anywhere in 2005, anywhere in the world that had to deal with anything about filmmaking and not see the trailer or not hear about this movie. I was relentless. I would sit there for 8 hours a day and just pound and pound and pound. So when I finally released the DVD, it was insane. We sold, I forgot what I said in the book. I don't know, like 200-300 in the first night or something like that. It was crazy. It was insane. And we ended up selling about over 5,000 DVDs of it at $20 a pop. So we came close to like anywhere between $90,000 to $100,000 when it was all said and done, off of a $8,000 short film. And then I launched I started getting calls from filmmakers. Hey, I want you to do that for my film. I shot it with the same camera. Can you make it look like yours? And all of a sudden I said, well, I think there's a business opportunity here. Let me open up Numb Robot, which was my post-production company.
And that's way before color was even a thing. Like color correction back then was.
No, I was color grading. Color grading in Final Cut Pro using filters. Color grading was a thing, but it wasn't a very expensive thing, and there was no real DI. It was like there was. I mean, we had already done "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Right.
That's true.
DI, but it was still very expensive.
Yeah.
And nobody was doing it like I was. And again, I saw a hole in the marketplace. So I decided to fill that hole with this product, and it did very, very well. And then I did another short and another, and I made a lot of mistakes, which I talk about in the book. And then fast forward 2015, I see another hole in the marketplace, which is a blog and a podcast that tells the truth in the way that I tell it. And someone with my kind of street credibility and credits and shrapnel, I didn't see anybody else like that in the space. So I showed up, I launched my podcast, and within 3 months, it was the #1 podcast on iTunes, and the blog started to blow up. And then fast forward to this week, I saw another hole. There is nobody talking about how to make money with this film, and not in theory. Practically.
Yeah, practical.
And that's why I came up with the book. I said, you know what? I think this is something that the world needs. And then this whole thing with distributor happened in the distribution world, and then I started to go really deep into it. And I mean, honestly, I could write another 4 or 5 chapters updating the book already, because from the moment I finished the book 2 months ago to the point it got released, there's so much that's happened. So it's insane.
Well, it is. Here's the thing, and you talk about it in your book, and we've known it since the digital revolution back in the 90s, when it like democratized, if that's the right word.
Demonetized?
Democratized.
Democratized, yes.
The process where now anybody with a couple $1,000 can buy a camera, a Mac, and you're a filmmaker now. Whether you're getting good at it or not, it doesn't matter. And you can put your shit out. And if you're better at putting your shit out than the guy that's 1,000 times better filmmaker than you become the guy that people know about, and the other guy is unheard of.
It's called Betamax versus VHS.
Yeah.
Betamax was a much better format, but VHS won.
Yeah. So it is easier. Like I've over the last year or so, we've been Googling and figuring stuff out and trying to learn about video on demand and like releasing to iTunes and Amazon and stuff like that. And it's like $1,500 to send your thing to an aggregator who will put it out on iTunes for you. And like, cause you have to go through an aggregator to do that. But it's like $1,500. It used to be cost prohibitive. Like it used to be one of those things where like, I'll never get my thing into Walmart or Target because I'm some dude living in I have to like hand walk that shit personally to myself. But nowadays you can get on the phone with anybody and then just click a few buttons and send some money, and it's a very affordable amount of money when you're talking about getting it on like the biggest fucking digital store in the world, or two of the, you know what I mean? So it's just really the process and how best to go about it. And you also give things to look out for, like don't do this. Like we were talking about is it collateralization?
Cross-collateralization.
Cross-collateralization, right. Which is something that makes perfect sense, but if you haven't been fucked over by it before and you don't have a friend who's been fucked over by it before, you might not even know because it might be your first film. You maybe never done this before.
And when you're talking about that, so everyone understands, you're talking about a distributor scamming you in a contract by not putting in this cross-collateralization thing. And if they want to know what it is, they can either look it up on Google or pick it up in the book. But there's a larger problem here that I kind of glazed over in the book, and it's something that I, in the updated version, which will be coming out next week. No, I'm joking. But
you can just keep the book, reselling the book, the second edition, the fourth edition, the 2020 edition, the 2021 edition.
Yeah, and you got to read the first edition to understand the second edition.
Yeah, sequels. It's franchising. Yeah,
I'm franchising the book now. Yes, it's Harry Potter but different.
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be a Filmtrepreneur land at Universal.
Right. Well, wouldn't that be boring for everybody except for filmmakers?
No, it'd be best. And then you go into the cross-collateralization ride where you just get screwed.
We just get fucked over constantly by Voldemort, the distribution company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's genius. Oh,
the company that shall not be named. Yeah.
Please just call somebody who's listening to this. Call me. I will give you guys the license to please just go do this ride. But I think the bigger problem is, and now the book really covers a little bit of the macro of the business, but it also really goes into the micro, into the details of everything. But on a macro scale, what is happening to our industry as we're speaking right now happened to the publishing business first, and then happened to the music industry next. We're just the next medium in line, because the technology screwed over the publishers, and that in combination with like Amazon completely changed their business model upside down. And same thing happened with the music industry. But I want you to understand, I want your audience to understand something, that there is a devaluation of media happening. It happened with books, it happened with music, and now it's happening with movies. So I'll use the music industry for example. Before, if you wanted to get the latest hit, the cost would be an album. It would be $17.99 on CD, or even farther back, record or tape. And that was the cost. It would be $17.99 to get one or two hits, and then the rest of it would be crap songs that you would never listen to. Then they would release singles and all that stuff. But who controlled the access to the media? The industry. The industry controlled the access. You couldn't get it any other way. And then when tapes came out, they freaked out. They're like, oh, everyone's going to bootleg us. And when CDs came out, everyone's going to bootleg us. Oh, my God. No, they did very well. But then something called MP3 showed up. And when that technology, I literally just read the book on how this happened. So it's fresh in my mind on how the entire music industry collapsed. This new technology called MP3 shows up, where you can have good quality sound, in tiny files, and you can share it over online. So then Napster showed up, then these torrent sites showed up, and all of a sudden the industry had no idea what to do, because now what used to cost $17 is free. And even worse, I could literally download the Beatles catalog in 30 minutes for free. And that used to cost hundreds of dollars. So you see the devaluation of music is already happening there. So then all of a sudden Steve Jobs shows up and says, oh, listen, guys, I've got this cool thing called the iPod, and everyone's buying them. And you really can't fight piracy. All you can do is compete with it. You got to make it easy enough and convenient enough for the customer so they don't want to go through the hassle or the legal issues of literally stealing online. You have to make it easy for them. So everything's going to cost 99 cents now. And they're like, what? I'm like, look, if you don't like it, you don't got much choice. So Steve Jobs basically hijacked the music industry. He completely changed the game.
Yeah. And nobody really believed that it was going to work.
Nobody believed it was going to work, and everyone thought it was going to be a thing. And but the thing was that the music business was hemorrhaging.
Yes.
Hemorrhaging the money because they didn't understand the technology. They didn't understand their customer. They didn't understand how things were changing. And all of a sudden, they turned into Blockbuster. They wanted to fight it. Every time there's a new technology, every single time there's a new thing that comes up, the establishment fights it. They want to hold on to the status quo because it's their cash cow. But you can't, with the internet and with the technology, you can't do that. You've got to roll with it. If you don't roll with it, it will be taken over by somebody outside the business. It happened with Amazon in the book industry. It happened with Apple in the music industry. And now it happened with Netflix in our business. So so to stay back in the music industry for a second, so the evolution of that was what? So now you pay 99 cents, which still, there was money to be made there, right?
Yeah.
Well, then all of a sudden, you open up Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. And now for $5.99, $7.99, $12.99, whatever that cost is, you have access to everything. You have access to all music.
And it was the weirdest thing when I got my Apple Music subscription is like they actually let you I didn't realize it at first, but they let you download stuff to your phone as if it's yours. Correct.
Yeah. And so now what used to cost $17.99, now it's literally fractions of fractions of pennies.
Yeah.
For that one song. So now there is no money to be made with the exploitation of the art. The exploitation of the access to the actual art, which is the music, there's no money to be made. There's very little. You can't survive anymore. And as you saw in the music industry, there's only 3 labels left. And they figured a few things out along the way. One of the smart record label executives said, wait a minute, YouTube is making money off of our music videos. So we're going to create Vivo. And we're going to monetize all that. And all of a sudden, that was a hell of a lot of money that came in off of something that was originally promotional material. That was a throwaway. And now they're generating money with it. But by the way, the studios are. The labels are. Not the artists. Not as much. So now the artists have to think differently. They have to start making money other ways. So what are they doing? They're touring more. They're selling more merch. They're selling access to themselves, not access to the music anymore. So now for $150, you can go backstage, take a picture, and get an autograph with your favorite musician. Mm-hmm. And they'll sit there and they'll sign 1,000 autographs. Because that's the way
people pay $150 to get an autograph from Brad.
Absolutely. I mean, I would.
They just want to get a look at him. Is it really as bad as Beckenmeyer makes it sound?
Right. Yes. Meet and greets.
Meet and greets. That's a pleasant experience right there.
They'll pay for that.
That's how you finance the next movie, boys. So,
serious.
But so that's the access. So that's what musicians are doing. So now it's just starting to slowly happen with the film industry, where now the valuation of movies and content is exactly the same thing. For Netflix, for $12.99, you have access to just 50,000 titles.
Yeah.
And then for another $5.99 or $6.99, whatever Disney Plus is, you got access to all of that now. So what once cost a whole lot, for $6.99, you get access to it now.
Yeah, so Disney. That's a company that used to put their videos on moratorium.
Yeah,
so
that's
there wasn't.
there
wasn't too many copies out there in the world. It's crazy that
because
now you can just.
They controlled it. That's the thing about these industries, including ours, the film industry, is about control of access. The internet has changed all that. So now they don't have the same control anymore. They don't. And they're struggling too. The studios are struggling. Don't think they're not. I know Disney's making billions of dollars, and out of all the studios, everyone's chasing Disney because Disney figured this out a long time ago. And they've built this infrastructure, and they've built this filmtrepreneurial business model, which is the movies and the content that they create is marketing to make the real money. And if you look at their corporate filings, which I did, and I did a whole article on it and a podcast about this recently, I wanted to know what the exact number was. Like, what is the percentage of the money that they make? By the way, next year or in 2019, they made estimated $70 billion in revenue. So
that's after buying Fox and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So if that's the case, how much is actually the exploitation of the movie? Meaning selling access to the movie. That's box office, that's DVD, that's licensing deals, that's streaming. All of that, right? I wanted to know how much it was. And they have arguably the biggest brands and properties in the world. You know, Star Wars, Pixar, was it Star Wars, Pixar, National Geographic, Fox, Marvel. They own everything. Right. So what was it? And it ended up being that it was first was parks and resorts. So that's where they make most of their money is parks and resorts. Secondly is cable and networks. So like ESPN, Disney Channel, all those properties. Yeah, ABC, that kind of stuff. Third was movies and selling of content. And then fourth was merch. Okay, merchandise. But in that first one, which is parks and resorts, included in that total is all the merchandise they sell at those parks daily. So the three other sections dwarf the amount of money. So I think the final number was like 11% of all the money that comes in is the actual exploitation of the movie. Though it is the engine that runs the entire thing.
It's the commercial for the thing, yeah.
And this is He-Man, this is Transformers, this is Star Wars, this is all of these brands. I mean, the toy companies literally made Transformers the cartoon to sell toys, and He-Man, and She-Ra, and Little Pony, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. All of those were built to sell toys. That's the only reason they were in existence, was to sell toys.
Yeah, it's weird. Because a lot of people, like in the 90s, when I saw, Scorsese's Cape Fear and Reservoir Dogs and those movies that made me want to make movies, that really pushed me over I was a music major, so I went from one penniless career to the other. But
sure.
But the things that pushed me over the edge was making a movie. I have, and we talk about this a lot on our show and with other people. It's so weird, all the things I've had to learn just so I can keep trying to make movies that have seemingly nothing to do with making movies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's weird, but you do have to be a Renaissance man of sorts, I guess, a Renaissance person of sorts, just to keep, I'm a writer and a director. That's what I love to do. That's what I want to do. But to do that, you have to, do things that you don't know how to do. You have to learn. Yeah. I heard a quote one time. The guy was just talking to me. He says, to be a filmmaker, you have to be willing to be a 50-year-old cab driver. Mm-hmm. And it's true. Whether even within the world of making a film, you have to. I've held the boom mic and the camera at the same fucking time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
And it wasn't the best thing ever, but we got our scene done that day. That sort of stuff. And you can't say no to shit. Yeah. So
the world. Listen, man. The world that we're in right now, and the world that we're going into, resembles nothing of what you and I grew up in the 90s, where cinema and the independent movies and Reservoir Dogs, those movies aren't being made anymore. Yeah. Those movies aren't being made, not by the studios. Yeah. And the independent world, there's just such a difficult way to make money. Do you think Reservoir Dogs would show up today? Do you think El Mariachi would even see the light of day? Do you think Clerks would ever be seen other than like on Amazon Prime somewhere,
Yeah.
while Kevin Smith lived in his mom's basement still.
Yeah, those filmmakers even say we would never. Yeah,
they were at the right place at the right time with the right product. That's basically what all of those films were. And the same thing happened with the film school generation, which is the Scorseses, the Spielberg, the Lucas, the Coppolas. They were at a moment in time where the studios had no other options, and they opened up the gates and let the inmates run the asylum. And that's why that's why the 70s and arguably the 80s were some of the best cinema to ever come out of the studio system, because they didn't know what else to do. They were dying. And now the studio system is going only to franchising, only to IP, only these big tentpole movies, because that's the only thing they know how to do now. They can't take the risk on a $30 million movie.
Isn't it so weird to hear just to say those words? They will rather take the sure bet of a $300 million movie instead of take the risk of a $30 million movie. To me,
you know why?
When you're talking about spending $3,000 or $300, I'm like, I'm going to go with the $300. But
the thing is this, and the reason why they do that, it makes perfect business sense. If I have a $30 million movie in today's world, to get that movie in the eyes and get the attention of the audience, which is a broad audience that they're trying to reach, they're going to have to spend $100 million.
Yeah.
And they're doing it on a $30 million movie. It doesn't make sense. So now, in order to compete, because the studios have to compete with YouTube, video games, and independent films, and every other thing, and Facebook, they got to compete with all the things now that have our attention.
And
so they need to spend obscene amounts of money to get our attention. And they're not going to spend obscene amounts of money to market a film that costs $30 million. It doesn't make financial sense for them.
It's also just like you talk about it in your book. There's so much out there that I think it's called the paralysis of choice is what it's.
Oh God,
yeah.
Absolutely. Every day.
Yeah, like literally Netflix has, like you said, thousands of titles, and I can't ever find anything I want to watch. You know what I mean? It's like the Irishman, but but you can spend an hour flipping around. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that.
I literally, before we got on here, I was lying down and resting for a minute, and I was just like, well, I knew a show that I wanted to watch. I wanted to watch The Toys That Made Us. I love that. I love that series.
Yeah.
So I was watching that, and I was like, okay, when that's done, then I'm gonna go. I already have in my head where I'm going, and what I'm gonna watch, because I've put it on my list. When I see something I want to watch, I'm like, okay, I'll put it on my list. And that's the only way I can kind of cut through all the noise. But then every week, there's 15 more things I want to watch. There's so much stuff I would watch if I had the time.
Yeah.
I have so many things on my list that I will never watch, because at the time I'm like, I want to watch that, but not right now.
Yeah.
And it's over. I have a list full of thousands of things that I will never see, but I want to see them.
But that is what the studios are dealing with right now. They right now there's an arms race for content. So everyone's buying up all the stuff that we know, Friends and The Office and Community and all these shows. They're buying them out for, like, South Park was sold for $500 million in a licensing deal. So they're trying to grab onto everything, because everyone's now fighting for eyeballs. So now you've got to have the biggest, baddest streaming service for everyone to come on to. And Disney showed up, and Disney has everything. They have such an immense amount of content, and The Mandalorian is an amazing show. And they're doing it. They're doing it right. When they opened up, they had 10 million subscribers. It took HBO Go, I think it took them 3 years to break like 5 million. So, and now Disney, and the rumor is that they're saying, and these numbers will come out later, but they're averaging 1 million new subscribers a day.
That's fucking insane.
A day, because they look, man, I have kids, and I'm also a man of a certain age who loves Star Wars, loves Marvel. I partake in an occasional National Geographic documentary.
Oh yeah, those are great too. I did not realize they own National Geographic until I saw
they
Disney
own it
Plus.
now because it was Fox. Yeah, because it was Fox. Yeah,
that's crazy.
And I was thinking, like, they haven't even touched their vaults. Really, I think they launched with 7,000 titles. Do you know how many movies Disney has? I forgot what the final total was, but like all the stuff all the Touchstone stuff, all the Hollywood picture stuff from the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, all that's like, there's just so much content that they have. And it's insane. But that is the world we're living in. The streaming wars have now officially begun, and we're in the middle of it. So regardless of all of the stuff we're talking about, I know it sounds very depressing, as we said earlier in the show. I know it sounds very depressing. I know it sounds very depressing. There are a lot of filmmakers listening right now. They go, well, Alex, what the hell are we going to do? Like, how can I make a difference with my $1,000 film? Am I ever going to even get anyone to watch this? Because
now, like, now that I can afford to make one, how do I get anyone to see it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, before the entry, the barrier to entry was the making of it, but now it's to get it seen by anybody. And not only get it seen, because you can put it up on YouTube tomorrow and get it seen. It's actually how to generate money with it.
That's a business model in and of itself. Is just create here, like, you're an indie filmmaker. Well, I have the secret formula, you know, and then just pay us to have your movie seen.
Talk in your book a little bit about you know, streaming video on demand, ad-based video on demand, and transactional
TVOD.
video on demand. TVOD, yeah. It sounds cooler when you say TVOD. So what we've been trying to figure out with our little humble film, and by the way, we're working on another film that we know is more of a we know we could sell it better.
It has a marketing plan, got tons of ideas, but
right. And listen to your book.
And hopefully
really
the book has helped you. And hopefully the book helped you.
The book really did help me. I was thinking about our second film a lot while we were. I was like, oh yeah, this will work. This will fall into place.
He walked in from work, and I was like, I had 3 or 4 ideas that I'm like, I've been sitting on these ideas. I just didn't think we could do anything with it.
But our little film that was really our prove it to yourself that you can make a feature film. And by the way, like we said earlier, we talk shit about it, but it's us, you know, trying not to get our heads too big about, we made a fucking film. So did everybody else on the fucking planet, right? So, but we are proud of the film, and we know that people could or would enjoy it, of a certain type of audience.
Sure. You don't laugh at it.
We're and especially people that know us, because it's very much our sense of humor, you know. But we're really not sure, like iTunes, like you're talking about getting something on iTunes.
Don't.
Literally, right, to put it on iTunes is more than we spent on the movie itself.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
So for a movie like yours, this is what I would do. Don't try to put it on any of the platforms, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could put it up on video on Amazon yourself, and that's where I would do. So I would upload it to Amazon, go to rev.com, get your closed captioning, get it up there, and put it up as transactional. Okay? Transactional. Because you're going to run a transactional campaign, and you're going to run it. You can buy the movie for $2 or $3, and you can rent it for 99 cents. And that's what you're going to do.
You know, that I could get behind that, because I believe.
I'm so glad you can get behind it, Brad.
I feel like I could talk myself if I was the person I'm talking to. Hey, it's just 99 cents, or it's a couple bucks. Come on.
This is the world we're. So I want you to understand, this is the world we're in right now. If you put it up on Amazon Prime, your movie will probably get a penny per hour streamed. It's starting in January, so it's going to be a penny. So basically, for a cent and a half, someone's going to watch your movie. Now, the benefit of that is that they have millions and millions and millions of people around the world, but what are the chances of them? And eventually, this is where your movie is going to go, eventually. But right now, I would put it up for 99 cents to rent, make a really good trailer for it, focus all your energy to your audience and to people who you know, and go, I would put it up 99 cents to rent, $2.99 to buy. Yeah. So even then, or $3.99 to buy. So even then, people will be like, I like these guys. Let me give them $4.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's such a low bar for most people that it's going to be easy. And if they know you or have a relationship with you in one way, shape, or form, whether they're listeners of yours or something along those lines, it's going to be a way for you to generate revenue. Yeah. And
that's good to hear, because that's where we were leaning. Like, we actually almost got into an argument about iTunes the other day, and I was in my mind, I was thinking, really, it's not that much to put it up there. And then, but Brad convinced me. Not convinced me.
Is this before or after my book?
This was during.
Before.
This is during
Okay,
your book. During your book, we were
Okay.
just tossing ideas around, and I was really thinking out loud, you know. But the conversation helped me, because I will never give Brad credit for this. But the conversation we had helped me decide that was a bad idea for that particular film.
I just
But-
want to stress that I've learned. I don't know. I'm 40 something, and I don't know much.
Yeah, you also don't know how old you are.
I don't know.
40 something.
I don't. But what I do know is I've learned that if you want to be successful and make money, make a profit, is that you don't want to spend money
Yeah.
to. If you don't want to take money from your job, your life, your everyday life, and put that into, this will, let's put it into the movie. You either want to use other people's money, or you create, like in your book, you create the income that will generate the money to pay for the thing that you want to do. So that's where my mind is, kind of where you're,
And it was
what
cool.
you're teaching
It was
in the book.
it was cool to hear you talk about because it was you. Your behind the scenes stuff for the making of your film, because we also know that we went through a process that we weren't even, until we did it. It was like, well, let's see if this works. Making it for nothing, sort of like blood, sweat, and tears, sweat equity, begging people to please show up tomorrow. We have to shoot these, stuff like that, and then just letting it all go. Like we figured a lot of shit out on how to make a movie that way. Which, by the way, it's not nowhere near the best way of making a movie. In fact, every day we're like, we're not doing it this way again. But but we did. We got it done, and we know, because we've done it that way, that we could help people figure out how to make their movie that way, and maybe even not do it. Not run into the hiccups that we ran into along the way. Because it took us 3 years and 3 different separate castings and all that stuff before we even shot day one, because of things that we were kind of figuring out as we went. So we do know that we know stuff now that we didn't know before, and we could help people. So that's what we hoped to do with our podcast way back when we first started it, and that's what we hope we do with every episode, is having people like you on and just really just talking about experience that we've had, and that you've had, which, by the way, you've got a ton of experience in doing something. And here's the thing. My grandfather said he flew 55 missions in World War II, dropped bombs, and said, you can't argue with success. So he was like, he had some outranking officer flying in his plane trying to tell him how to do stuff. He's like, listen, this is my 55th mission. When we're done here, I'm done. I'm not going to do it your way, because my way has kept me alive. You can't argue with success.
Right.
My grandfather was hilarious with little, pedagogical quotes like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So that's true. You can't argue with your success. You have a fucking streaming TV network, which I think is still fascinating. I have not subscribed yet.
How dare you, sir?
Every time I hear you talk about it, was torture for me listening to this. Meeting is over.
Okay, so it'll make you depressed, and it's torture. We've established that. Go ahead.
But no, it's torture because I know that it's almost like an indie film school. Plus of this, yeah. So it's fascinating that you even figured out. When I heard that you had a streaming app on the Roku, it's like, hey, he's figured shit out. He's just and there's no. Then when we talked to you about it before, you basically just said, I had to figure it out, and so I figured it out. I decided I wanted to do it, and I did it. It's that attitude. Mm-hmm. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Absolutely.
That old quote. So what I am impressed by and constantly inspired by when I'm talking to you or listening to your podcast or reading your book or whatever, is the fact that you take the shot and make it work for you, even if it doesn't work that time. So talk about resilience and all that stuff that you clearly are naturally good at, It seems like.
Well, I think you're giving me way too much credit when it comes to that. Look, first and foremost, I take shots, but as I actually did an entire chapter on one of my bigger failures in the book, on that Red Princess Blues app that I created. So I'm very open with my failures, because I think you have to fail and fail often to learn. That's the only way you learn. You don't learn from successes. You learn from failure. And that's why,
Brad, you've got a success coming at some point. I'm just telling you.
Anytime now, Brad.
Any day now.
The math says eventually you will fail into succeeding.
You can't. Yeah.
So as far as resilience is concerned, look, I was infected with this disease called filmmaking back when I was in a video store. Yes. And it is a disease that I can't get rid of. There is no vaccination for it. There is no cure for it. Yeah. And it flares up every once in a while, and the only treatment for it is to be on set. Yeah. And it is that thing.
It's weird, but I do feel that way.
Yeah.
No, it's illogical to do what we do. It's illogical to drive a taxi cab to support your filmmaking habit. It's a drug. This is not a sane business to be in. But anybody who's in it will fight tooth and nail to stay in it. And and that's what the industry uses to rip people off, to abuse them. That's what distributors do. That's what the studio system has done for decades upon decades. They sell a lot of sizzle, but they have very little stake. And now with media growing as fast as it is, there's so many more people doing it, so much more competition. It's brutal out there. And for me, I've tried to leave the business multiple times. I've had that conversation with myself. I actually left and opened up an olive oil and vinegar tasting gourmet shop for 3 years. So I did like the occasional post job and an occasional directing job when it showed up. But I was essentially out of the business. So when I launched Indie Film Hustle, I launched it from zero. Like, nobody knew who I was. All my accounts were 0 followers. There was nothing. There was no website. There was nothing. I barely had a social media presence as Alex at all. So the resilience I have is the disease. It's like I want to leave you, but I can't. I've wanted to leave this business more times than not.
This is codependent.
It's not even codependent.
It's an addiction.
It's kind of like having. I use this analogy. It's kind of like having that really beautiful best friend, who's a girl who you've known all your life, and you're just hanging on.
I'm just stuck with Brad. I don't know what you're talking
about.
No
benefits.
No, you're waiting for that moment that she's going to look at you and realize that you're the one that she's been looking for her entire life.
Right.
But instead, you're in the friend zone, but you hang out for decades waiting for that one moment that she'll go, oh, it's you all along. Yeah. And that's what we wait for in the film industry. We wait for someone to give us that God from Mount Hollywood to show up and tap us on the shoulder and go, you shall direct. Yeah. Let's go do the next Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's what we're waiting idiots.
For. Because we're idiots. Exactly. That's not the way the world works. Does it work for some people? Yes. Do some people win the lottery every day? Yes. Somewhere in the world, someone's winning a lottery right now. Someone's winning a jackpot at a casino. But they never show the millions upon billions of people probably who lose every day doing the exact same thing. And that is the sickness that we have. That's what I'm trying to change, the mindset of filmmakers, to not think that I need someone else's permission or someone else's help to do the art that I want to create. Because you're giving someone else or an industry the power over you. And that's what this business is built upon. It's controlling it.
Yeah, it's funny, not funny. It's weird, I guess, or whatever. But it's like, I know I have a bunch of people who are novelists, and a handful of them do a lot of self-publishing through places like Amazon. And their first book, they put out their first book, and they're like, oh, not many people are buying my book. But then they go off and they write a second one, and then a third one. And the 3 compound so that the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, I know people who have like 8 or 9 books out there now because they've been working on it for a decade. And now they actually, like you're talking about, are able to sustain at least a living doing what they love. And it only compounds more and more and more as they go. So
I'll tell you one thing, because I this book, The Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, is self-distributed. I published it myself. So I created my own brand, IFH Books, which I'll be releasing more and more things on. And my first book, Shooting for the Mob, I went with a traditional distributor. It's when I got my first check, I just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm like, oh my God, it's distribution 101. It's the same thing again.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. I tell you, I can't even tell you how many multiples of money I've made already in the 4 days I've released this book.
That's crazy. You mean compared to your first book?
Compared to my first book. Yeah. Not like I'm not going to Paris tomorrow. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But off that first ridiculously little check, I've made astronomical amounts more money self-distributing it. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll never distribute with a publisher again, ever.
Yeah.
Unless it's a huge publisher who pays me a lot of money and it's guaranteeing a lot of exposure, and and then you use it as a loss leader to generate other revenue, and there's other business models around that. But at this level, I'm like, oh, I was already thinking of my next 3 books. So I'm like, oh, well,
of course you are.
I know how to do this now, and I know what it costs, and I know how to do it. Also, I understand this business model now. And I'm like,
one of the things your book does is it makes, I mean, it could just be me. I can only speak for me, but it makes me think that, well, maybe I should have gone to business school instead of TV school or film school.
No, because you just read Alex's book and you're all good.
I can just grab a camera and, I mean, you and I went to school, but we still ended up just making the films. We made a bunch of films that didn't even get finished.
That's your real film school, really.
But so that's our real film school. So then I'm like, man, I should have just went to marketing or business school.
Yeah, and then still make shitty films at first.
Anyway.
But that's the thing that the film industry teaches. They don't want you to know about the film industry, the film business. They don't want you to know about it. They want you to be the artist, and they want to take money from you. And that's just the way the industry's been running forever. Why did you think that these big stars, like back in the 80s and the 90s, they were making $20, $25 million a picture? Why do you think that was? Because the studio's accounting system was called Hollywood accounting for a reason. They'll never make a dime on the back end. It's very, very difficult to do so. So they're like, look, if you want us, you're going to have to pay me $20 million just to show up. And that's the deal. And my union will take care of all the other residuals, and that's the end of the deal. So they had to get paid up front because they knew they were going to get shafted in the back end. That's just the way the business is built. And I wrote about it in the book that especially at the lower end, like these mid-level and low-level distributors that become essentially predatory distributors, their entire business model is to get as many movies as they can in their portfolio, throw as much of it against the wall as they can, see what sticks, and to keep as much of that money as possible. That's their business model. Their business model is not to give you money. Their business model is not to build relationships with you, because there were distributors like that. There were studios like that. They were like, you know what? We want to build a relationship with this filmmaker. Like Chris Nolan, Warner Brothers wanted to build a relationship with Chris Nolan. Warner Brothers wanted to build a relationship with Clint Eastwood and Zack Snyder. And they stayed there, and they just kept making movies at those studios. Yeah. But that's at a much higher level. These little distributors, they don't care about they don't give a crap about building a relationship with a filmmaker or even a production company. That's rare.
The story you told about the distributor, in the one story you told about them where they were releasing 40 titles a month.
Yeah.
And how ridiculous it was to even consider the possibility that they might actually promote your film.
No.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that was when you said 40, it's like, holy shit.
And when we get off air, I'll tell you who it is.
Well, I could well, then that's it. So we could talk to you forever, and I'm sure that you don't have forever to talk to us. But I'm
good for a little while. So if you guys want to keep talking, I'm all about it.
So I love the fact that you are also a meditator. You and I
Yes.
like briefly discussed meditation. Then you mentioned it again in your book a couple of times, but also in your bio that you read about yourself, which I also, by the way, understand how awkward it was for you to read your own bio because it's like the whole book is, braggadocious enough for me reading my own words. Now I have to read my fucking resume to everybody. But
I called it out while I'm reading it. I'm like, this is awkward, guys.
But that's what he's preaching in his book.
Yeah.
Is that you need to do that because no one else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And you got to make a profit from your film.
Yeah.
There's one part in the book that this is probably one of the most proudest things I wrote in the book, where I was literally telling you as the reader that I was using the Filmtrepreneur method on you.
I was running and I was laughing and running at the same time while I was.
I'm like, look, guys, I'm doing this to you right now. Here, let me help you. Why don't you just go to www.
You did wait till you were almost done with the book to drop that little shit on people, but no, I thought it was funny.
But I wanted, and I go, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right.
But the thing was that I wanted people to understand that my book is extremely transparent. Yeah. I mean, there's very little I hold back in the book.
But the thing about your book is that it is that, but it also is full of. I mean, it's a reference guide. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I want to look up, get my shit on, on iTunes. What does Alex Ferrari have to say about that? You go to that thing and look at it, and you can read it. And it's not like you have like 100,000 word chapters or anything. It's succinct and easy to read and written in a way that is not, like I said before, over like talking down to the person. Like, here, I know all this stuff that you don't know. It's not like that. It's also doesn't use language that's over the person's head. Like if you don't know the thing, like maybe you don't understand what he's talking about, but no, you like break it down really well. And I also liked in you're welcome and I appreciated it too, because I was able to listen to it almost in one sitting, without having to stop and think about it, or because some books you read that are great books, you still got to just go, wait a second, I gotta like let that sink in a little bit. And it was good. I mean, you can literally read your book a couple of over and over and over again and have things make sense in a different way as you go along the next time and try it again. So, oh shit, that's what he's talking about.
Right.
But I like in your audiobook also, there's at least 3 or 4 sections where you like step out of the book and just give like a Alex Ferrari pep talk.
Yeah.
That's like felt very much like your podcast.
Yeah, I wanted to do that because I always liked when authors do that in audiobooks. There's a couple authors that I listen to that do that. I was like, if I ever do an audiobook, I'm going to do that too. And this book, it just I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to jump out here real quick, and I just give a little expansion. So there is, if you do get the audiobook, there is more content in the audiobook than there is in the actual book. Just a little bit more, but there's still a little bit bonus materials in the audiobook. But yeah, I wanted to do that. I wanted to, I believe it or not, the audiobook is probably one of the more difficult things to do. I mean, reading, I could talk for hours as you can see.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Reading for hours out loud is a whole other thing. You're thinking about pronunciation. Yeah. You're thinking about timing, and it just, performance. It's a thing. That's the reason why Shooting for the Mob does not have an audiobook. And that's going to come out in the new year, because now that I did it once, I'm like, okay, I can go back and do Shooting for the Mob.
Oh, really?
And I got about 30% of that one done.
That's cool.
And that one I can't jump out in because that's like a story.
Yeah, it's a narrative.
Yeah, that's a narrative, and that's a very big difference from my first book to this book. This is a practical educational book, and the first one is just a story. And I think that's one of the reasons why this book is doing better, but it's also hitting a nerve.
Well, it's hitting. It's like directly to your tribe or your people.
Well, I've built a product. I built a product for my audience. Like, look, everything I build a product for my audience. I built something that has a tremendous value proposition. I mean, at the top end, $25 to buy the book, the physical book, and on the low end, it's $10 for the ebook. I mean, the amount of value you get in the book is insane, and I could have easily pulled back and put some of that behind a paywall, but I said no. If I'm going to do it, do it.
Now that I'm thinking about it, did you ever read Christine Vachon's book, Shooting to Kill?
No.
Okay, so well, Christine Vachon is the famous, Christine Vachon, famous producer, produced. I'm drawing a blank right now, but a lot of really seriously indie films in the 90s and 2000s. So she wrote her company is called Killer Films, and if you looked her up, anyone listening, you would recognize the films. I think she Velvet Goldmine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So her book is a book for people that want to be filmmakers but didn't maybe know what all the, when you read the credits at the end of the movie, what's that guy do? And then you read that section, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. She broke down, it's like a guide to how she got her movies made, and also almost like a textbook for filmmaking. How to advice on how to schedule things. So your book is a lot like that. Even though you haven't read it, of course, it's not like you're copying the thing, but it was one of my favorite filmmaking books I read when I was starting to try to figure stuff, when I decided I was going to have to read more textbooks, in a way. Then I couldn't just read, Rebel Without a Crew and know how to make a movie. You had to, there's other stuff you have to know.
There's a few other things, yeah.
Yeah, donate your body to science, you can get your movie made. It doesn't really work like that, So, but your book reminded me, now that I'm thinking about it, reminds me of your book. But your book reminds me of her book because it was so helpful in that way, and sits on my shelf right to this day. And I still flip at it every now and then and go, okay, and just see what she had to say about that, at least back in the 90s.
Right.
But meditation. So we're talking about meditation.
Yeah.
I am on my, I don't know. I've been doing it for about 2 years, and I'm about a year and a half into consistently every day, about, 40 minutes to an hour a day.
Good.
And it has, I tell people it has changed me, but really what it does, it has gotten me back to the person I thought that I was, but struggled with because of just basic, not, mindful things that you hear people talk about when it comes to meditation. And I feel strongly about it. David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, where talking about the ideas are just, it's like fruit to pick off of a tree. If you can just clear your mind and think straight, and you just go to that space, the still space, where you don't really get, because you're trying to not have ideas while you're meditating. That's kind of the point, but they come to you. I had a whole script. Listen, okay. I had a whole script come to me in January. I was driving home, and in the 15 minutes it came that I was driving home, it basically downloaded into my brain like the Matrix, like I know Kung Fu. And I wrote the thing in 5 days. In basically 6 or 7 sessions, I would writing 18 or 20 pages, and it just kind of came out. And that was a product of meditation. I might have had the idea at some point in time anyway, and all that stuff, but it basically just, and I was having a good window of time where I was feeling some heart coherence and all that stuff that they talk about, and I was feeling good, and it just sort of poof, it was there. And I, from that point on, was 100%, 1,000% behind. Everybody needs to do some kind of meditation and pull themselves out of this shitty, angry, noise, static-filled world that is really doing its best to isolate us, put us all on our own individual islands, and hate everything and hate everybody. And it's just, nothing good ever happens. No good ever comes out of that. And it has really not changed my perspective, because I always felt this way, but I always struggled to get there on my own. So I know you in your book talk about being like a strong meditator, and I think the last time you were on, you said you tried to meditate up to 1 to 2 hours a day.
Here's the question out of what you just said. How, out of this, coming out of me listening, and I think maybe listeners, how can meditation help me with my filmmaking?
Yeah.
Well, funny you should ask. I had an entire episode dedicated to this on my podcast.
We were
People
gonna
go to
we're gonna do
www.
one. We're gonna do one too. So we'll see how many people listen to ours compared to.
So no, I'm joking. But so just to give you an example, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I wrote that in about 2.5 months. So it just vomited out of me. Like when I went to sit down to write about distribution, I was supposed to be a chapter. And 15,000 words later, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to break this down a little bit more. It just spewed out of me. And I think it's because when I do meditate for about an hour to 2 a day. I generally try to go after. And it has changed my life in ways I can't even express. It clears your mind. I personally don't try to quiet my mind. I personally don't try to, it's impossible to. I actually heard a monk who'd been meditating for 30 years. He goes, you can't quiet the mind. That's not possible.
Yeah, I heard a thing today that said the longest anyone had ever gone without a single thought was about 15 seconds. And that guy was a monk who'd been meditating for 50 years.
Right. Like that's not going to happen. What does happen is I'll go deep into my meditation where I will lose track of time. Yeah. And I will come out of the meditation and I'm like, was I sitting for 10 minutes or was I sitting for an hour? I don't know. So that when you get into that transcendent kind of meditation, which has taken me years to get to, that is pretty magical. But even if I sit there for an hour and I just have ideas flying through in and out of my mind, and I'll think about things, I'll go down the road, and it's just a wonderful way. I have so many ideas that come to me when I meditate. It's great. And it clear, like if you have a problem in your life, ask the question at the beginning of the meditation, and a lot of times at the end of the meditation, you'll have the answer.
The intention, yeah. So, what do people ask you about meditation a lot? They ask me about it all the time because I'm constantly saying.
I get asked about vegan. I ask about vegan. They're like, "Where do you get your protein from?"
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Oh,
chickpeas, fucking chickpeas, black
I
eyed."
just tell them I go out into my yard and I eat the grass. It's free.
Right.
That's what cows do.
People are always telling me, I can't meditate. I can't get my mind is too crazy. Like, well, so is everyone's. Your mind is doing what it was designed to do. Your brain is supposed to think. That's what it's doing.
Do you want to understand why people say that? It's very simple. Your mind is built to protect you, and anything that is new is a danger. Yeah. So we all live in our own little comfort zone, our own little boxes. So that's why it's so difficult to lose weight. That's so difficult to start writing that book or make that movie or write that screenplay, because that's outside of our comfort zone.
It's
your mind will resist all change.
The spiritual world, they refer to it as the ego, and your ego is telling you a lie to protect you.
Well, your brain likes programming.
It's to protect not you, but to protect itself.
Itself.
And when you are, and trust me, I will fight it to the day I die.
Oh fuck,
human. It is part of our existence is dealing with this. So when you start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, that is when change will start happening. So when I look, it took me years before I could actually sit down and meditate. I tried so many times, but I would just say, I can't do it. It's not doing anything for me. And because your mind's going, this is a waste of time. What are you doing? Go watch some TV.
You feel ridiculous.
You're ridiculous. This is not going to work. But when I finally just said, no, this is what's going to happen, I'm going to do it. And I did it. Now this is my new norm. It is it's not natural for me not to meditate. I feel weird when I don't meditate. I feel weird when I don't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go work out. That is a weird thing for me now, because that's my new norm.
That's the other thing people always say is, I don't have time. I'm like, well, take 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes, right? Get off fucking Twitter for 5 minutes and meditate.
Excuse. Everyone's got time.
And like me, I don't get up at 4 a.m., but I get up at 5 every day so that I can meditate for 20 or 30 minutes before I teach high school TV production. So I meditate for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, calm before the storm, and then I meditate at the end of the day to fucking purge whatever that was. That's 7.5 hours with teenagers, and then get my day back. So because really, when you have a day job like that, like you really, and you're a filmmaker or whatever, you really go to work after you leave work. And so that's great. So I always love talking to other meditators because it just reconfirms what I already believe, and I like hearing people that agree with me. So
Yeah.
but so
You are right, sir. You are correct.
Thank you. I know. I just need other people to agree with me. No. So if you're on an elevator and you had, well, that's 5 minutes is a long elevator ride. So if you had, somebody bumps into you in an elevator or
If you're
something,
trapped in an elevator,
and they say, "You're Alex Ferrari, the Indie Film Hustle TV guy. You're Indie Film Hustle podcast. Give me what's your 2 minutes of wisdom you have to get me started on my Indie Film Hustle journey." What do you tell them?
Well, I know. But go to www.com and buy all my shit.
www.com.
Then
Just go to, I love Brad. Like, go to www.com and buy my shit. That's awesome. Can I get that on a t-shirt? Just go to www.com and buy my shit.
I'm copying that right now. That's our t-shirt. We need the money.
On the back is like, buy this t-shirt, we need the money. You see,
It's like a feedback loop. It's feeding off of itself.
I'm just telling you, look, I've laid out a revenue stream for you guys. I mean, come on.
That is actually not a bad idea.
Okay.
The front, go to www.com and buy my shit, and on the back is like, buy this t-shirt at my website. Yeah. It's a feedback loop.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. That's amazing. I always have a ball coming on your show.
Good.
So the advice
we're always really depressed when you're done talking to us. So I'm glad you get something out of it.
I mean, it started off depressing according to Brad. So
yeah, that's okay. He was born that way.
Yes.
So listen, I think the bottom line for filmmakers in today's world is that if they don't get entrepreneurial and do not become filmtrepreneurs, they will not survive. And that's just the frank bottom line. Just like the music business, just like the publishing business, if you do not become entrepreneurial, and publishing, they're doing it as well, where if you see these books that they're giving away, they give away free books. You always see like, oh, just give me your email and we'll pay for shipping and we'll ship you out the book. That upsell, what they're doing is they're basically using the book as a lead generator to upsell you a course or another product that's a higher end product where they actually make profit on. And the book is a loss leader, or they have consulting, or they use it for other things. But the really smart authors are doing that. So the same thing with the musicians. People who are just trying to make money selling their music, they're going to die. So the same thing's happening to filmmakers, and I think I'm the first to kind of really sound the alarm on this, because filmmakers are making movies like it's in the 90s, man. It's not. It's just not. So if you don't learn about the entrepreneurial side of it, and again, I'm not saying everybody's entrepreneurial. That's not the way a lot of people are built. Like, you don't want me to do your accounting. That's not a thing I should do. But if you need me to do other things, I'm good at other things. If you can't get behind it, you need to at least understand it, be interested in it, and then partner with people who can help you along this path, and you can work together to get something done. But without this element in independent film, you will not make it. That's just straight up as raw as I can make it. Will there be outliers? Will there be exceptions? Always, in every industry, in every business. There will always be exceptions. There will always be outliers. But for the rest of us who don't win Sundance in 1993, we have to think entrepreneurially, because if you're relying on film distributors, or if you're relying solely on one revenue stream, which is the exploitation of the access to your movie, whether that be sales, rental, TVOD, AVOD, SVOD, all that stuff. If that's the only revenue stream you are betting on for an independent film that costs you $150,000, you're stupid. You're done. It's like basically building a bottle of olive oil, if I may go back to that. If you create a bottle of olive oil and you go to one store in your neighborhood to sell that olive oil. And I've spent $100,000 on the olive oil factory, but you're only going to wait for that one store to give you money. You're not diversifying revenue streams.
It's all your eggs in one basket. It's like the
Right.
oldest adage of all time, but it's
like, business. Yeah. It's business 101. But the thing is that revenue stream of exploitation of the film itself, access to the film, that can be one of many revenue streams, but that revenue stream is drying up day by day, month by month, year by year. It's getting harder and harder and harder for distributors, let alone filmmakers, to make any money with that model. That model is broken. It is gone. It will crumble. The studio system will fail in the way that we see it today. There will always be, I think, a studio. Like Disney's not going anywhere. I think Warner's will probably do well, and possibly Universal, because they're diversified. But some of the other ones, Sony, I don't know. They have some properties, but they don't really have enough properties to compete with any of the other guys. And same thing goes for Lionsgate and who's the other one? Paramount, for God's sakes. They got nothing. Yeah. They got nothing really, other than a library. So the system is crumbling around you, and this is an opportunity for filmmakers to do something and to be at the beginning of something, like the same way it was when digital took over film. If you were smart, you were able to make money. You were able to make your movies cheap and sell them into the traditional system while that was still going on. But that system is over. You need to create multiple revenue streams of product lines and or services that are outside of the industry, outside of the traditional model, where you control the revenue, whether that be going to conventions and selling DVDs yourself or T-shirts yourself, whether that's building an online streaming platform, whether that's building a membership site, whether it's building a post house, whatever it is, whether it's speaking or writing books or whatever it is, something that's outside of the business, and you're using that movie to drive the sale. It's He-Man, it's Transformers all over again. And that is the only future independent filmmakers have, I believe. And if not, they're just not going to make it. Or you're going to make your movie so cheaply that if you can't generate $1,000 with your movie, why are you doing it then? Then you're a hobbyist. And that's one thing I wanted to say. The difference between a hobby and a professional. And the difference is that right now, I make a living doing what I love to do. I make a living working in a business that is teaching filmmakers and filmmaking and all the things that I do. And I'm able to make movies. And I generate a living with my movies and with the business that I've wrapped around the making of my movies. I'm considered a professional filmmaker. Then there's the hobbyist who goes out and tries to make a movie, but they have their day job. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. It's taken me 25 years to get to where I am right now. It's the same equivalent of me going out and buying a guitar and learning how to play. There's a real big difference than paying all of my bills with that guitar or going out to a coffee shop once a week to play a gig. You're a hobbyist.
Yeah. I want to highlight, though, that sort of you answered my question, and I already did the answer, but I want to highlight it for everyone else. For those of you who are intimidated by the parts, because, look, we can't do everything. I mean, let's face it. And we live in the day and age where you kind of need to learn to do everything, but you can't. But you hit on it a little earlier, that you find the people who partner up with someone who's good at the things you're not, but approach your filmmaking habit as a business. Figure out how to make its own money. So you don't want to start out with I know it's going to be a deficit. You figure out how it's going to make the money back that you spend on it, or figure out how to generate the money first that you're going to spend on the film. Whatever, just approach it as a business model and find those people to partner with to help you. I'll call it the mastermind group, because that's what I was taught to call it when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. You need a filmmaking mastermind group, I think, because you can't do all this and survive and get your stuff seen on your own. Yeah. I think
the game is changing so rapidly that, I mean, look, I was at AFM this year, and from last year there was 800 distributors there, and this year there was 361.
Jeez.
and they were all scared shitless. They just didn't know what to do. They just don't know. They're like, well, we'll go give this a shot. We're going to give this a shot. They don't know because their revenue streams that they've been holding on to forever in the old traditional model they're just drying up. Things are changing so rapidly. It's where you feel like the ground that you're walking on is in constant flux. So and if you're only going to walk thinking that the ground's not going to move, you're going to fall. So you should expect the ground to move and start jumping with it and start pivoting and adjusting. And that's how you're going to keep moving forward. If not, you're going to fall into a deep cavernous hole.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah, the beauty of all of it you're talking about, it could sound really intimidating, but my favorite part of all of it is exactly what I wanted to do when I set out to make movies anyway. I want to make the movies I want to make. I want to tell the stories I want to tell. And the thing is, your book and what you're talking about basically gives people permission to do that shit.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Do that and own your shit and really figure it out as you go, maybe, or do it. But really, you don't have anybody out there going, yeah, you can't do that, except for yourself.
Yeah, and look, I didn't say this in the book, but I was interviewing somebody who'd worked with Werner Herzog, the very famous director and wonderful co-star in The Mandalorian.
Mandalorian,
and one of the coolest voices ever.
He's got oh my God. Yes.
Such a great voice, such a great look. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, he was telling my guest, who's a composer that worked on a couple films of his, that he only survived in the business because he owned all of his early work. He was the owner of all of his early films. He had like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 films he did in Germany. And he owned them, and he made a living. He kept the lights on by licensing those films to other people and generating revenue with those films and doing screenings and he owned them. And that was the way he was survived. That's the way he survived for many, many years. And in the book, like I talk about, there's a whole chapter on regional cinema, the regional cinema model, where there was a guy who made a movie for $3 or $4 grand. It's an art house movie, but it was based around his neighborhood or his city that he knew that this film would do well in. If you want to make an art house film, the Filmtrepreneur method is built for you. If you want to make a genre movie, like a horror movie or action film, this method will work for you. If you want to make a vegan documentary, if you want to make a vegan romantic comedy, or a meditation documentary, this works for you. It's irrelevant about the genre. The only things you always have to keep in mind is, if you're going to make an art house movie, make it for a budget that the market will justify. Meaning that if you want to make a really experimental art house film, you make it for a couple grand, and be prepared to lose that, unless you do a lot of research and understand who you're going to sell it to, and that allows you to be good. How you're going to sell it, and that could be by having a podcast, and you might have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 listeners. And you make that movie and you go, hey guys, look, we made the movie we've been talking about for 6 months. We're going to sell it for $5 a pop. Can you guys, can 1,000 of you guys buy it? And now you made it for 2,000, you made it for 5,000, and there's the beginning of it. And there's the start of your filmtrepreneurial business and your enterprise. And that's where the ego comes into play, where filmmakers are like, I need $100 grand. I can't make a movie for less than $100 grand.
Yeah,
I can't make a movie for less than $1 million. I'm like, well, good for you.
I struggled. Yeah. Go. May the force be with you.
Exactly.
I for a long time struggled. I got a few years, more than a few years ago now. I got a film made. We did a nice crowdfund. We raised, it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to do what we needed to do. $16,000 with it. We probably made it for 20, which is way too much for a short film these days. But
yeah, I made a $50,000 one. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, right. So I was, for the first time in my filmmaking career, able to pay actors and crew like a air quotes legit filmmaker, and like pay people not just like the $25 and cover your parking if you come help me out for a couple hours. It was not that. And so for a few years after that, I struggled with like the ego part of it, of having to take a step back and not being able to make my feature film that way, because I I was not going to be able to pay people what we paid them to come work on our short film for 2.5 days. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, so I didn't get anything made for a while because of that. Like you were talking about in your mind, you want to, and for me, it was well intentioned. I didn't want to like not pay that stuff. You know what I mean? You talk about in your book, always pay people something. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is. And that's a great model for people on like mine and Brad's filmmaking level, and probably, well, not probably, thousands of other people out there, millions of other people out there trying to do it the same way. But trying to be Scorsese isn't going to fucking work for Becca Meyer right now. You know what I mean?
No, because Scorsese can't even be Scorsese.
Yeah.
Do you understand that he couldn't get Irishman funded by any studio in Hollywood? He's Martin Scorsese.
He's Martin fucking Scorsese, I know.
With Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel,
Al Pacino,
in a mobster movie written by I forgot who
Steven
wrote
Zalian.
it.
Steven Zalian.
Yeah. And directed by
Schindler's
Martin Scorsese.
List. Yeah, fucking yeah.
And
those guys can't.
If he can't get funding for that,
yeah.
What do you think your chances are?
Yeah.
It just so happened that the new business model of Netflix, they don't really care about money in the same way that the studios do. Their business model is different. Do you know that Amazon, have you ever noticed something? Because I read about this and it was fascinating to me. Do you notice the kind of movies that Amazon buys and the kind of series they make? Do you see, like, they have the Jack Ryans, but what kind of movies and shows are they making and buying? They're very highbrow. No, it's not. That's not true. Oh. It's very high. It's very highbrow.
Yeah.
It's very art house.
Yeah.
It's a little bit above the normal fray. They're not making Stranger Things. That's not their goal.
Yeah.
They want to go after the art house, the film festival kind of films.
Oh, you like A24 and Neon. And...
Yeah, they're going after those films.
Yeah.
Or films that are just a bit higher end, story-wise, than like their show Bosch, which is amazing. It's an intelligent cop drama, and Transparent, and those kind of movies, and what's the one that just won all day with Fleabag, and these are shows that would never ever get put anywhere else, generally speaking. Maybe Netflix, but nowhere else. The reason why they do that is because their business model is to sell stuff. They don't care about the movies. They use movies to sell stuff. And who's going to watch a high-end art house film? Generally speaking, that's going to be a really good customer because they're educated and they've got money to spend. And that's who Amazon Prime Video is aimed at. Why did you think they opened up Amazon Video Direct to all the independent filmmakers and independent producers? They wanted that content. They wanted that higher end content. Well, not everything's higher end, obviously, that goes in, but all their original stuff that they buy and the big stuff, generally speaking, that type of content.
Yeah, The Big Sick.
Yeah.
The Big Sick.
Yeah, great film.
Great film. But look at that demographic. They're looking at a young, educated demographic who will go and buy T-shirts, hats, toothpaste, whatever. That's where they're making their money. They don't care about ROI specifically. They give it away with Prime. They literally give it away with Prime. You will never see advertising on Amazon Prime, ever. Ever. Netflix, you might. Hulu, you do. Because Netflix's business model sucks. Sorry. It's Netflix's...
They're going to pop soon, I think.
The Netflix's business model sucks because they're not diversified. Because if tomorrow morning all their subscribers go away, they're screwed.
Exactly.
If tomorrow morning Disney Plus crashes, Disney will be okay.
Yeah.
If tomorrow morning Warner Media's whatever streaming service crashes that they're coming out with, if Peacock tomorrow goes, Universal NBC is going to be fine.
It's ridiculous that Netflix isn't what do you call it? What do you call it when you have a show and other network? You let other networks
Syndicating.
Has it been canceled?
But it's ridiculous that Netflix isn't syndicating its original content on.
But that's not their business model. That's not their business model.
I know, but they could make so much money.
No, it's not about money. Not that kind of money. Everybody now is about creating their own original content and controlling it. Even me, I have a small streaming service, right? So I was licensing content. I was licensing movies, things like that. But I've now shifted to either partnering with courses or gaining access to courses, buying them outright, or creating my own original content. So I don't have to worry about that. And that content will not live anywhere else but on my platform. So with my new movie On the Corner of Ego and Desire, you're going to be able to see it on Amazon Prime and iTunes because with the deal I have with my distributor. But you will only be able to see it on IFH TV with director commentary, with special features, with behind the scenes, with things that you can't get anywhere else. So it's exclusive. If you're a fan of what I do and you want to hear my director commentary on stuff, then you're going to have to go to IFH TV. And it's going to be affordable to do so. But you see, I'm controlling my content. Do you see what I say? And On the Corner of Ego and Desire is basically a big advertisement for what I do.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Well, the idea just popped in my head. What about other filmmakers? Are you open for other filmmakers to say, well, here I can put I have a package. I have my film and I have a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff to go with the film. Are you? Yeah. Are you open?
He said he just said he was doing that, but he's shifted more to.
I've shifted more to more original stuff, but if there's value there and there's something that I feel that we can make a deal. So, but generally speaking, I haven't seen a whole lot of that stuff come through my doors, guys. I could tell you. And if it's about like you made $1,000 movie and you've got like half an hour making of, that's not interesting. If you've created a 3 or 4 hour course on how you generated, how you created that movie, and how you marketed and sold it and did all that other stuff, well, then let's have a conversation, Or you could give me the behind the scenes to drive sales to your movie or to wherever you're trying to sell. So there's so many different ways to structure a deal. It's all relative. It really is all relative. But original content is right now. It's a land grab right now for original content. And I just saw the numbers by 2025. Disney is going to be spending $40 billion a year on original content for Disney Plus, and Netflix is about $25 billion a year, and so on. So
we need to find out who these people who do we pitch to? That's what I need to know. Who are the Netflix people, Disney people?
As Yoda would say, and this is why you fail. Because
I'm hitting stop right now. I'm not recording anymore.
This is why you fail, because you're still looking for someone else to give you permission and to give you the opportunity when you should be creating that opportunity for yourself. That is the Filmtrepreneur method. That is what I'm preaching, that the power needs to go back to the filmmaker. The power needs to go back to the creator, and they should be in control of their own revenue. They should be in control of their own art, not a big corporation. You can play that game, but that game's a lot more difficult to play, and it's not as much fun, believe it or not. I'm not really concerned with making billions and billions of dollars. Would it be nice? Sure, I can make more impact in the world if I have more money. Great. But it's not my concern. My concern is not to be rich. My concern is not to be world famous. Whatever notoriety I have is of service to what I'm trying to do in my mission in life. That's what I look at. So when you really just have to start thinking about, okay, change the mindset of like, who do I pitch? No. Who's going to pitch me?
Yeah.
That's where you got to change your mindset.
Because honestly, like you were saying, you could have more control and make more money on your own than by just being paid by somebody to do a thing for them. But however, if they
look, I truly don't believe that there's future in that because things are changing so rapidly that companies look, man. Like before, I sold my first movie, This Is Meg. I sold it to Hulu. I licensed it to Hulu. That's gone now. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that
crazy.
opportunity would never happen right now because Disney bought Fox to control majority stakeholder shareholder in Hulu, and that stopped. That changed because the business model changed. That's how rapidly things are changing. So if you start making a movie now and betting that you're going to sell it or do something that's hot right now, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to make my movie and it's in a year, I'm going to put it up on AVOD, on Tubi. Well, in a year, Tubi might be bankrupt. Or it could be the biggest thing since sliced bread. We don't know. There is no stability. There is no guarantees anymore, where there was for decades. For decades, you can trust that Miramax would, if a movie got bought by Miramax, you're going to make money. If a movie was bought by Fine Line or New Line or Fox Searchlight, there was revenue streams to be made there. Those revenue streams have dried up or are changing so rapidly that nobody knows what the hell to do. And now the only guys who are making any money are the guys who have really deep pockets, have really insane distribution infrastructures, and have a business model that is more entrepreneurial or filmtrepreneurial in nature, kind of like Disney, Warner Brothers, and Universal. But even then, Warner's and Universal are getting their asses handed to them by Disney.
Yeah. This and so much more in your book. I mean, we really didn't talk about specifically your book much, but we talked the whole time about exactly what it's about. Yeah. So, we appreciate you coming on and always being totally entertaining to talk to, and for laughing at our stupid jokes that we keep repeating episode after episode about how Brad's an idiot. But, yeah, and throwing one in there. This is why you fail. I'm keeping that one. Yoda.
This is Yoda.
Or
Yoda,
how about the new one is you have an arrow. You wear a shirt with an arrow on it, and it says, "This is why I failed." which is also ironic because you're putting the blame on someone else, which is why you fail. Yeah, and that's why it's smart.
Or that arrow is just pointing right up at your face. I'm just saying.
Oh, there you go. See, he made it better.
For our movie, since they're sex obsessed, we can have the really pathetic total awkward. This is why I failed. The arrow pointing down to the guy's dick.
Yeah,
and there you go. Look,
that's 3 different shirts on one idea.
I mean, I've thrown up like 3 or 4 shirts here alone, guys. I mean, seriously, I just need 10%. Just send it over. PayPal is fine.
All right. Cool.
Cool. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on the show, man. And we talked about the book a lot, believe it or not. We talked everything we spoke about in the episode mostly was elements about the book and what's inside the book. And I truly hope, man, I pray that this book sparks a revolution in independent filmmaking. I really hope it sparks a shift in the mindset of filmmakers, the new generation coming up, people like that are in your classroom, who are going to come in thinking this way instead of the way that schools teach them, which is like, we're going to teach you how to make a movie, and then you got to go out and try to find money and go out in the studio, pay everything. Like, that model is dead. It's been dead. So I hope that this book really does change things and helps a lot of people.
I don't think a filmmaker who really is trying to figure their shit out can read your book and have it not help them in some way.
There's a nugget here or there.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than a nugget here or there. But yes, if you're really trying to figure it out, and you want to make movies, if you want to be a filmmaker and you want to tell your stories, which we all, preciously, hold on to that idea, because that's really you've got to figure out how to do it in such a way that you can do it, because we can't even the film we made for next to nothing. I mean, we spent money over years gearing up for it, websites, gear, stuff, lenses, stuff like that. We can't even do that over and over and over again, and we didn't spend much money at all. You know what I mean?
I mean, to be honest, everything's like 4K now. Now we're like, all of our shit's extinct.
Yeah. So
Dude,
anyway,
and by the way, that whole 4K thing, it's all BS right now.
That's what I think.
I shot on the corner of Eagle and Desire at 1080p. I blew it up to 2K to project it at the Chinese theater. It looked amazing. Yeah. There's so much 1080p content out there that, trust me, it's not going away anytime in the near future.
Yeah.
And if you're being entrepreneurial about it or filmtrepreneurial about it, 1080p is fine. But 4K cameras are so cheap now, you could shoot 4K if you want.
Seriously, I mean, a couple $1,000. Yeah, it's incredible. So if they want to find you, they just go to www.com and buy your shit.
Yeah, no, you have to do it right. Just go to www.com and buy my shit. That's how you actually have to say it. There's a tang to it, sir. You can't
That's his impersonation of me. I think that's the first time.
He sounds better than you do.
There's a flavor. There's a scent in the air when you say it that way. Sir. I'm not sure what that scent is, but there's something.
It's anger.
It's a stank.
It's a stank.
Put some stank on it.
Stank. You got to put a stank on it, sir. You've got to put a stank on it.
But
seriously. Seriously, for me, it's going to be a few minutes. So it's first things. I have a bunch of stuff, but
got a list.
If you want to get the book, first and foremost, you can go to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com, and that'll take you to. You can get on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and Audible. I even show you how to get the book for free. If you've never had an Audible account, you can sign up for that account for free, have a 30-day trial, and download it for free. Don't worry about it. I get paid either way, but it's a way to get your book for free. Then you can go to indiefilmhustle.com, which is the hub of everything I do. If you're really interested in filmtrepreneurial techniques and things, you can go to the website filmtrepreneur.com, which is in the book as well. And of course, my podcast, Indie Film Hustle, Bulletproof Screenwriting, and Filmtrepreneur, and indiefilmhustle.tv, which is the streaming service, which is film education reinvented and streamed all over the world as well. And there's a few things I'm sure I'm missing. Shooting for the Mob, my first book. My new movie's coming out in January called On the Corner of Ego and Desire. But all that, you'll find about all that at indiefilmhustle.com. Is the biggest best place to find it.
Great. He did that all in one breath. The more you make, you're going to have to take some deeper breaths. Like the Tom Cruise thing where he held his breath underwater. You're going to have to go to some of those classes.
I know. I forgot to tell one thing. I forgot this other thing. AlexFerrari.com, which is just my personal site. I do a lot of consulting. So if anybody wants consulting on their projects or how to build out their entrepreneurial business model, things like that. Yeah, I do a lot of consulting as well.
That's one of the best business models today. Here's a video on why you should do a video call with me.
www.com. Buy my shit.
Buy my shit.
Well, if you want to find us... If you want to message us, of course, it's filmeverypodcast@gmail.com, and I'm Becca Meyer on Twitter and Instagram, and Brad is the Balding Ewok and all of those places. And we will see you. Yeah.
We're on Facebook right now. You can find us there.
Yeah. And until next time, go make something and be happy. And
the end.
Thanks for having me. It's been an enjoyable time, sir.
Yes, you too, man. Thank you for coming.
Go to his.com and buy his shit.
Buy shit. Okay. And cut. Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. And visit filmreverie.com to listen to past episodes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.